You are listening to E-Radio Show by Missed Apex. We are electric. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Matt Trumpets, and today's episode is called Can You Feel the Wheat? Joining us today is our friend and ace journo, Chris, no longer _Stevens on racing.com or something like that. Chris Stevens, how's it going there, Chris?
It's going great, Matt. And I absolutely 100% got your very clever show turtle, wheat being the French for number 8. And going into this Paris race, we're going for 8 from 8. And I definitely did not need you to explain that to me prior to the show.
And to prove that, you will now count to 10 in French for our listeners.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I went to 12 for you because that's the only way I know how.
Actually 13. And as I would like to comment, your accent is indistinguishable from an authentic French speaker's. Well done. Before we go on, I do need to remind everybody we are an independent podcast hosted by MissedApexPodcast.com, bringing you race reviews, news from the paddock, and tech analysis. We live stream our race reviews, so be sure to subscribe to E-Radio Show on YouTube so you get a notification when we go live, so you can join our live chat room as well. It's off to the City of Light, my favorite city to visit in the whole world, pretty much, mostly because I had a magical time there with my wife, and then again with the whole family a couple of years ago, which I understand has not been the case for you.
Yeah, we've often had arguments on this show, especially last year. Got quite heated, didn't it, about our feelings towards Paris. And as I say, prior to last year, I did have some pretty bad experiences of Paris, but the last time I went was pretty nice. I mean, it's no, taking my wife to the most romantic city on the planet, but it'll do.
I suppose so. Well, shall we play a bumper and get to it? So you mentioned 8 from 8. And obviously that has to be a possibility because after all, we did 7 from 7, but who are we looking at to make that happen?
We did 7 from 7 from people we weren't even expecting to be, race winners after the first few events of the season. So the top guys we're going to be looking at surely now is Nissan Edams. And not just because, they're a top team that haven't won a race yet. But I think this track is going to work really, really well from them. It's totally different to Rome. We all remember Paris, the slow, narrow circuit that has got so many surface changes and really, really rough surfaces as well. It's the one track I've walked the most because it's the track I've been to, the most out of all, it being one of the more recurring races of the calendar. Actually, Rome and Paris are the only 2 races I've done more than once because because of circumstance and B because the calendar keeps rotating all the time. But so in terms of that though, it's a track everyone knows, or most of the guys anyway. The rookies obviously have got to learn it, and this is pure Formula E. I think this track. Does that mean it's much good? I think the debate's still ongoing about that one. I personally don't really like this circuit or the venue, to be honest, but it is probably one of the very few races on the calendar that has quite a secure future, it being held at the home of the FIA and for so many manufacturers and so many top drivers like John-Eric Byrne, who are from Paris. So there's that. It's here to stay. But this is about as street circuity as street circuits get. It's telltale. I mean, even with the old cars, when they used to go through those final few corners and the way the floor used to proper smack against the ground as they went over the bumps and through the ridges. And I think with the new Gen 2 car, it's going to be even more rough and tumble.
Okay, so you mentioned not liking the track all that much. What about the characteristics of the track do you find... Well, what is it that you don't like about it in terms of the characteristics? Let's leave the venue aside because obviously when you go to a city, as with when they came to Brooklyn, you only have your pick of certain places, and I'm just going to assume they picked the best one that was possibly available to them. But what about the track bugs you in terms of in terms of Formula E and the way the cars are racing?
It's not great for wheel-to-wheel racing, it being incredibly narrow. The corner layouts don't really set up, wheel-to-wheel action, and the straights to put it simply, aren't long enough. It's one of the shortest circuits we go to all year. And I find the corners, they're not particularly challenging. And we see, even cars that are much, much quicker really struggle to get through slower cars. I mean, we saw how Sam Bird struggled, against the two DS cheaters for so long last season. You really do need a massive speed advantage to be able to make a move. And hopefully attack mode will provide that for us this season, might make the job a little bit easier. But I just think with the Gen 2 cars, the speeds are even greater now. There's less to be gained in that area. I think the racing is going to be a little bit harder, and they will need. So I think as soon as you start a safety car into the mix, I think the race is done at that point.
Right, and we discussed that a little bit, but I'm going to ask then, is this why you think Nissan is perhaps a good choice? Because they do have that advantage out of the corners that has been credited to their twin motor layout, and about which illegality we've not really heard very much more, have we?
Well, it's not illegal. Like, let's put this as a fact. It is 100% legal. The debate is whether it should be banned because it's not considered sporting. And I think if you don't consider it sporting, then you are not doing motorsport properly, right? If you can do something and it's better, you do it. That is just how it works. There's no such thing as a gentleman's agreement in sport. It just doesn't exist. Anyway, on to, Nissan's chances for this weekend. I think for two reasons. One, the speed, the punch out of the corners, as you mentioned. We didn't get to see that in Rome because it's quite a quick circuit, especially for a street track as well. And compared to some of the ones we go to, there aren't really any slow corners in that, or none that you would be able to build that kind of an advantage out of, because it's kind of one slow corner leads into another slow corner and another and another and another during that sort of stadium end to the lap. Whereas in Paris, you can exploit that a little bit better. And we saw, back when DS Virgin was a thing and was running it, they were quite competitive at this circuit. Would have scored a double podium had Sam Bird not cracked under pressure, I would say, against Buemi. But he was on pole there. It was quick in qualifying. And that is one of the key strengths of the Nissan Edam's car. If you can put it on pole, hold the lead into the first corner, you'll be sitting pretty for that, because you'll have track position. It's easily defendable. So long as you don't throw it away, you'll be just fine. And I think this is a track that Sebastian Buemi goes quite well on as well.
All right. So you mentioned that as being an aspect of why Nissan might have an advantage. But in thinking about the track, is it really just down to this is a track that has been around a long time, so it was conceived of with the Gen 1 motor and battery in mind, so that we have the long braking zone, so that we're sure we can get the regen we need to get to the end of the race. And I had sort of brought this up tangentially in the last race. Are we getting to a point where we need wider tracks for these cars? And along with that, a fundamental rethinking of what kind of circuit will show them off to the best ability of competition.
Where were the best two races this season? Marrakesh and Mexico City, the two permanent facilities or semi-permanent facilities on the calendar. Right? Absolutely try and stick with the street track idea because it's really cool. But you got to start redesigning the circuits to suit the cars better, because they've outgrown them. It's a simple fact. And when I ask drivers in testing, do you think Formula E is about to outgrow the circuits that we race on? Hong Kong and this one in Paris were the two ones I had in mind, and the ones I heard the most, where it was like, yeah, it's going to seem a little bit ridiculous around there.
All right, fair enough. But let's say that Nissan cannot get the job done. Who else might we look at as being sort of a dark horse candidate to make it 8 from 8?
Well, what I would say is, this track, very, very similar to Hong Kong in terms of, the number of surface changes, the poor standard of the surface, compared to what you see in motorsport, and the type of corners, very, very slow circuit, very short as well. Who was quick in Hong Kong? Diaz the Cheetah. So Andre Lotterer might finally get his redemption. He's built up to it after to Rome as well. Envision Virgin Racing. They could be right up there as well as they were in Hong Kong. So I'd say look out for Sam Bird, Robin Franks as well. We know those two can be split by absolutely nothing when they're at their peak. And I would expect to see the same again. So in terms of a new winner, you're looking at Franks and Lotterer there. BMW were quite quick in Sanya, which was not as comparable as Hong Kong to Paris, but still quite a similar circuit. So we should look at them as well and hope that Alex Sims can finally string something together with a bit of luck. I mean, if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all, would he? So now that he's had, I think, the worst of it after Rome, where he had his powertrain failure and then powertrain change and then penalty for said powertrain change. So hopefully he'll be able to string something together here. But I think if we're looking at Diaz Cheetah as well, we got to look at John-Eric Byrne. He was so good around his home race last year.
All right. Well, I noticed one name has gone very conspicuously missing, and that would be Pascal Wehrlein. He's not coming up at all.
Well, let's see where Mahindra are at on their pace, because there's been a dip, and some of their testing might be something to do with that. And Pascal reckons maybe the car, the way they've set up, doesn't quite work in the colder conditions like we have seen in Sanya and in Hong Kong, not so much in Rome. And to be honest, the car would have been better there had it qualified properly. So again, you're looking at the whole Group 1 scenario, and I think in this race we're still going to see that, because it gets, I'll tell you what it gets in Paris. It gets very greasy, because around this time of year, the last 2 times I've been, it has been really hot, and there's a lot of pollen in the air as well. And when that starts to sit on the racetrack, it's not nice, right? So I think you're still looking at the Group 1 effect, because it's just a really dirty track in general, and it doesn't get a proper clean at any point, I don't think. So there's still going to be that. So I think Mahindra, because qualifying already isn't their strong point, they're going to probably be starting down, the mid pack and the rear of the field again. I hope I'm proved wrong, because we need to see them getting back up there. What they really need to do now is, start to improve the qualifying performance so that they're not as far back as, say, with the BMWs and the Cheetahs might end up if they are really hindered by being in Group 1.
Yeah, well, I like this idea of the circuit characteristics of different cars playing into it. So I'll bring up Van Dorn as well. I mean, he had a super good race last time out, but that's more of a one-off, we think, right? That's probably not as sustainable as, say, someone like Mitch Evans and Jaguar, where we think that they finally sort of fulfilled the potential, and maybe we can look for them to be closer to their front. Or no, you're nodding your head in a very negative fashion. So tell me what's going on with those teams.
I disagree. We have seen consistently higher pace from HWA than we have done from Jaguar. Jaguar, really, there's only been one race where they've shown leading pace, and that was in Rome. And again, we're going to a very, very different circuit. That's one of the longest tracks of the year compared to one of the shortest. So I don't think we're going to be looking at a high energy management race. It's going to be quite easy to control this one, I think. And especially the chance that this race is going to get red flag. I'm going to just say it now, because you will have some sort of incident, probably around the first lap, where they'll want to throw a safety car out, but because they don't want to turn it into a flat out race, they'll throw a red flag out, right? And the stewards will shake their heads because they're taking a stricter approach to contact now, because the rear of the car is too, vulnerable and the front of the car is too rock solid, which is just an awful combination for wheel-to-wheel racing, frankly, and is the reason we are in this predicament that we are in with Formula E at the moment. Going back to HWA and Jaguar. Jaguar haven't really shown the consistent pace, whereas Vandoorne's threatened this for so long. He's been in Super Bowl 3-4 times, I think, and was running really strong in Santiago. On for a top 5 there. He was on for a podium in Hong Kong as well. Looking at a very, very similar circuit, conditions are going to be different, granted, but I think we should look out for HWA. They're only going to get better as well. And Venturi as well. Again, they were really good in Hong Kong, and they were really good here last year with Mauro Engel. So let's keep an eye on those guys. They could be dark horses for this one.
All right. Then let me ask you about their crankshaft issues. Have they been sorted? Is this a thing? Is this going to be a thing? Because, we know they have problems. We know Rome had the big jump. You say that it's very, very bumpy. Could this be a source of unreliability for them in this race?
Yeah, this is a really, really bumpy track. Really bumpy. So it's going to be different to Rome, where you have one high impact moment, because the rest of the track is actually quite smooth. But because you have that jump, you have one intense ka-chunk moment where it takes everything all in one go. Whereas in Paris, it's less brutal, but it's more consistent. You're getting it around the entire lap at a bit less speed, though. So for sure, it's gonna be at the back of their head. They're gonna be thinking, "Oh, I really hope the drive shaft, hangs on," especially because pretty much all of the Venturi powered cars, so both the Venturis, both the HWAs, had issues over the previous race weekend, and pretty much do nearly every race weekend. It could be their undoing. Vandoorne was nursing it, to the checkered flag, and he got so lucky that it conked out, half a lap after he crossed the line. So, and HWA supposedly got a minor, a bit of an upgrade, because you're allowed to make changes based on reliability or safety, kind of standard FIA rule for homologated parts. What you can't do is change something for performance reasons. So I wonder if Venturi are going to get that same one as well. Around the midpoint of the season, we'd usually see some powertrain changes around this time of year as well. But of course, they want to cling on to it for as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And do we know much about where the attack mode is going to be located yet, or does that come later in the week?
Yeah, no, so it's inside a corner again. It's inside that hairpin before the back straight. So, again, I don't think it's a great position. Might not be as easy. Because the thing is, it's not like that corner has a high entry speed. It has quite a slow one already. You're coming through a bit of a flick left. It might be quicker in the Gen 2 car, and it might make more of a difference. But because it's such a slow corner already, I don't think you're going to lose all that much on the exit. This is pretty a bit of speculation, really, but I can't see it making all that much of a difference in terms of losing lap time. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, because attack mode is going to be crucial for kind of any action, I think, in this race, especially if we get an interruption with a full course yellow or a safety car, which is highly likely at this track.
Yeah, you said that, especially being narrow, we're going to probably see a lot of replays of the like the overtake we saw for the lead, and eventually one of them's not going to go well, I would assume.
That said, one of the great things about this track is how it punishes drivers for their mistakes, and they slam into walls when you get it wrong. And there's no track limits issues. It's just a concrete barrier greeting you. So in a way, that's nice, but it could be a little wider. It could be a bit better for racing. Obviously, they're so confined. You can tell how many compromises have had to be made to make this race happen and for it to be maintained. Pretty much every fan I've spoken to has said, yeah, the views aren't great as well. It is purely made so we have a race on the streets of Paris. This is how good it looks on telly, right? It's not great to be at. I don't really like it, as I've mentioned. It's not great for racing, but it's not really great for the fans. So look, it does what it needs to do, though. That's the important thing.
Yeah, and it's not like they did that at all with New York, for example. It's entirely different.
At least New York, though, they can alter it, and they did alter it. They made preparations, for Gen 2 before Gen 2 even happened. That whole extra dock loop section. I don't think it adds all that much to the lab, but that hairpin with the new Gen 2 cars just would not have worked. So, at least at that venue, because it's like Berlin, it's being held on private land. That, for me, is the future of Formula E, is having races like Berlin, where it's held on proper private land, and in an adaptable environment. In Berlin, they can do whatever they want. It's an airfield. It's an empty airfield where they can design literally any track they wanted.
So now,
and for me, it's the future.
Am I remembering correctly also about Paris? This is the one where they put the temporary pavement down to cover up the cobblestones?
Yeah. So right outside the Léonville building, which is where you have after the first corner, that's basically when you go into the resurfaced area, where it's recyclable tarmac, so they pull it back up after the race, and the cobble remains unharmed. So it's all very eco-friendly, and that's the one question I get a lot when people hear about this, because they think it's been permanently tarmacked over. It's not. It's all fine, and it looks lovely afterwards as well. But so they get maybe 4 or 5 corners of smooth, high grip tarmac, and now I'm not expecting it to be as hot as it was in Santiago, but that has been known to break up under intense heat.
Right. Do we have a forecast for the weekend yet? Have you looked?
I don't know. I haven't looked. I could look right now if you want. I don't think it's all that reliable at this point. But excuse me while I waffle for time. Saturday it says it's going to rain.
Oh, yes. Yes, that would be a completely large amount of fun, and would solve the pollen problem, too, I have to say. Maybe. It wouldn't solve the energy problem, because if anything, you'll use less energy because you're on the power less, and you'll be braking for longer, but might help the whole wheel-to-wheel racing thing. So fingers crossed. Yeah, well, we need all the help we can get at circuits like that. But I will say, I do like the thing about street circuits that's nice is it almost always solves the track runoff problem very efficiently, because there are just walls everywhere. So there's no endless debate about this, that, or the other white lines. It's like, well, you're either in the wall or you're not.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 corners that have a small bit of runoff, and then there's not big either. And what I will say, what I like about the Paris track is that it's just a stone's throw away from everything, So the last few years where I've been, like, I could not have been in a hotel that is far away. You just can't. It's not possible. Everything is close, and all the nice bars and restaurants are right outside the gate as well. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that is nice. Now, I know it's not in our notes, and I'm not sure if you have any information about it, but I couldn't help but notice on Twitter that Formula E has ended its YouTube influencer campaign rather prematurely. And to some of the stuff that I read, perhaps they should have been willing to try and adapt it to yield the results they sought. But have you heard anything about that? Do you know what's going on there?
I don't, and I'll tell you, because I do not give one iota about it. I really don't. It's just not something I care about in any way, shape, or form. It was a nice idea. It really was, for a way of appealing to a very specific audience, I think. I don't think it was quite as mass as formerly thought it was. A mass young audience, maybe, but at the same time, why would you watch people? I know this is a popular thing on YouTube, watching people do other things, or watching people watch other things like reactions videos and that. When it comes to a proper live sport, and that's a service you're distributing out, though, I don't think it's going to work. And it didn't. Why would you watch somebody watching a live sport as it's happening when you could just watch said live sport? That for me, that's why this has even come up in the Missed Apex chat, right? Somebody said, why don't we record ourselves watching Formula One? And I said, no, that would be a terrible idea. So let's just end the whole debate on that one, because I thought Voltage was a nice idea, not one that I thought was going to kick off, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's obvious to me is they were trying to leverage the pre-built audience that these influencers had, but then you have them not necessarily on their channels. You bring them into a studio and are doing some other thing with them rather than asking them to organically take Formula E and include it in their content, if that makes any kind of sense at all. Mm-hmm. And having tried it the way they initially thought, having seen that it not yielding the results, I'm surprised that with the investment of money and time that they weren't willing to try some alternatives before just pulling the plug.
Here's what you do, right? And you take that group of people, you invite them out to a race, you pay for them to come out because it'll be worth it. Trust me. This is what everyone else does. This is why, celebrities come to races and stuff like that. This is probably why, Owen Wilson made it to Malaysia that one time, among others. You'll pay for them to come out. You tell them, I want you to record everything you do. Make a vlog for your YouTube channel, social media, photos, everything. Plug the hell out of us, right? That is a much more effective way of spreading the good message. It's like when Justin Bieber followed Formula One for like 2 or 3 races. The amount of following that guy has, that now I've seen like, oh, I never thought about Formula One, and Justin Bieber was there, so it must be kind of cool, right? Oh, I guess I'll give it a what? He's in Monaco. I'll go and watch the Monaco Grand Prix, and then they're like, boom, it's amazing, I love it, right? That's marketing.
So basically, you're saying Formula E should have a race on an abandoned tropical island and build a tent city, and fly everybody in for it, and plus have a great concert.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
That would be.
Maybe
awesome.
That's what we could do for the London one of the XL. Right, it's already half indoors. We could put a stage in there.
Yeah. I can't tell if you're getting my reference or not. So.
No, sorry, that was a reference to something. I'm so sorry.
The Fire Festival. Oh, come on. Tropical Island, tent city.
I'm 21.
I have just ruined your millennial credentials there. Everybody knows about the. It's on Netflix. Oh, that's probably the problem. It's on Netflix. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Guy made up this whole festival, spent all this money, took all these deposits, and just, it wasn't even close what he promised and what actually happened. And now, of course, criminal charges are involved. I believe. I don't know. It's all alleged, and we understand everything just to cover any legal basis.
Is that's the festival docudrama, right?
No.
Okay, right. Now this is the real millennial thing. I've been meaning to watch it. It's on my watch list. I just haven't got all this Grand Tour episodes to catch up on at the moment.
Well, speaking of Netflix, I ran across, and apologies for diverting to Formula One temporarily, but I did meet someone this weekend who has become a Formula One fan through watching the Netflix series. And I thought I had seen cameras like that around Formula E. Is there not plans in place to do a similar thing for the series or anything like that? I'm just curious because it seems like nothing actually has happened from that.
Well, Stephen Fisher documentary that is currently in the editing phase, I believe.
Looking forward to it because we need more fans, right? I mean, we've almost caught up with Missed Apex in terms of viewership. We're just a little bit off, but the more fans Formula E has, the better.
Yeah, 100%. No. From what I've heard about it, it will be highly amusing. It will take the mickey a little bit, but not out of the series, out of the characters involved in it. So hopefully you can kind of catch where I'm going with this, but it's from what I've heard about it, it's very, very funny, and it tells a really good story about the key, or not even the key, the big characters of Formula E.
Right. Well, we wouldn't want to give that away. No spoilers here. No spoilers here. But okay, that's good. I'm glad because I remember the cameras from last year and seeing the success of the Formula One adventure, I was surprised to see nothing yet from Formula E.
They were the vast majority of races last year, if I remember rightly. So there will certainly be a heavy amount of footage. I for one, can't wait to go and see it.
Okay, so maybe we should wrap this up then. Am I missing anything else here in terms of the race that would be useful or good to know in terms of the teams and in terms of who you think have a good chance at getting a podium or winning this weekend?
We haven't talked about Audi.
You're right. We've not talked about Audi. That's kind of amazing because it was really hard to ignore them last season.
Right. They might do well. That's really all. What more can I say? They've been so up and down. It's unreal, right? Like one weekend you can't stop them. The next weekend they're down in 8th. Okay. Now where did they finish in Rome? It wasn't good. They're due a good one.
Wow. Thanks for that keen insight. Audi. Well, maybe they'll do well. Maybe they won't. Back to you.
Right. You can claim to be the best Formula E expert, right? That I know everything about Formula E. Even they will not be able to predict races this season. I could be, like, I've sat here, I've talked a lot about Nissan EDAMs, right? I could be so way out in terms of, because it gets thrown out. The rain could suddenly throw everything out of the water, right? Or they don't get their setup right. You know, and suddenly on the back foot, and then Mahindra got it right, so they shoot up to the top of the standings at the end of the race, right? All I know is that some of these cars are quite nicely suited, and some of them have been so up and down. There is no way of possibly predicting it. If you're at the top of the championship right now, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of them starting very low down the order, and we're going to have maybe another a lottery type scenario. The good thing that Nissan have got going for them as well is both their guys go out in Group 3, right? That's even better qualifying. There's another reason. So, well, we keep coming back to the same thing, but yeah, we'll see, basically, won't we? I think one thing is do you know what, Dragon? If they can throw another good double Super Pole performance out there, because we saw last season they suddenly kicked it up a gear in qualifying in the second half of the season. Which would definitely leave Neo round the back of the grid, unfortunately.
Very unfortunately. And we think Lopez will be able to string a lap together this time around, should they do well?
I mean, he's a cracking qualifier. It's always been a little bit elbows out with the racecraft. I think that's fair to say.
I think so, but I'm not sure I could characterize his first lap out in Rome as a little elbows out.
Do you know what it turns? Yeah, stringy, like he'd had too much of the really cheesy pizza where you pick up a piece and then by the time you lifted it to your mouth, there's still a string of cheese going from the slice of pizza to the rest of it, right? Bit like that. That was Lopez's first lap in Rome.
Yes. In other words, a hot mess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you've got anything else, now might be an excellent time to plug your stuff, to tell us what's going on in your world. Where can we look for you? What are you up to?
Yeah, plug away. So I'm at Chris on Racing on Twitter. I'm currently thinking about whether I should start a Facebook page as well. I'm debating about that while I design my website, which I started to do during my bank holiday weekend, right? And then I thought, I won't pay for the plan now because, you know, it's a few days to payday still. So I'll do it on Friday. In the meantime, I'll set everything else up. I went to go and install some plugins and nope, got to pay for that. So website's been put on the back burner for another 2 days.
We'll talk later about that, as I've done a few websites for people and I know a thing or two. A Facebook page? Sure. Why not join the dinosaurs?
Yeah, right, it is the dinosaurs, but it seems like every account I got, the Facebooks do pretty well, so I thought I'd try it.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I think you sort of have to just scatter things far and wide and see what works best for your purposes. Well, that's good to know. You've almost designed a website and you might have a Facebook page. This is the kind of go-getter attitude that we look forward to from you, Chris on Racing.
Oh, and how can I forget? We did the Rye House live show for Mr. Apex podcast. Absolutely go and check that out. It was A, hilarious, and B, really, really informative, which is what the show is all about, I guess, with special guest Alex Brundle as well, who was amazing as always. And we have the highlights package from the karting event coming in a few days, I think.
But most of all, we have you doing an imitation of me trying to talk about tires, which was
yes.
Nice work. Way to bring it up immediately at the start of the show. I have to commend you for that.
I was really happy with it. And then I nearly lose my voice when Spanners gives an incorrect answer in the quiz on our behalf. And I think someone should turn me into a GIF because I look left and right and then left and right and left and right.
Well, it may yet happen. Now, did we mention in the show, isn't this an anniversary for you? A Formula E anniversary?
Yeah, it's a race anniversary. So what day are we recording this? Wednesday. So on Tuesday, it was 3 years since I attended my first Formula E race, which was also in Paris. Which is it's a nice little thing. I did testing before that, so it's kind of been 3.5 years since I've been covering Formula E. But 3 years since my first race, which was really, really weird to think about because it's changed so much in such a short period of time.
Yep. Well, wait till you start adding zeros to those memories, my friend, and then it all gets ever so much worse. Anyway, that makes you a veteran reporter on our E-Radio show. And as for me, I, of course, am at MattPT55 on the Twitters. Come tell me I'm wrong about all the things, and I'll happily argue until the ends of the earth about that. And don't forget to catch us on Twitter at E-Radio Show. And if you're part of our Missed Apex Slack group, be sure to join the Formula E channel as well. And remember, chicks dig heels, wounds cause scars, and glory is a fungible concept under certain philosophical precepts. This has been E-Radio Show.